me.
that's fine.
I would love to ask you a question, because this is the thing that has, after I drifted out of the church, the reason I've never come back is that I find philosophy very compelling, in the sense that if you have these philosophical arguments that coalesce with scientific arguments, which coalesce with historical arguments, and there is an interpretation of scripture that you can interpret them coherently with, I find it very beautiful that you have this unification of all these different converging lines of evidence. I find it very powerful. I understand that there's alternative readings of scripture that will read against it. That's fine. But so the biggest thing for me that would be just so difficult to understand is that when we say, and this is going to sound so out of left field, we've been talking history all day. So now it's like, let me just bring up some random philosophy question. But I just want to get your take on it, because you're a bright guy, so I think it'd be great.
I appreciate
So
that.
the existence of matter as a brute fact that lacks any kind of cause, to me, is very difficult to accept, especially because if we're going to say that matter exists in time infinitely, then we have, okay, well, how did the infinite past conclude to get to the present? And then if we have, there's infinite matter, and we have an infinite collection of matter. So now we have a quantity of matter that God himself can't count, because it's like he couldn't know what the last soul is. So it creates all these weird things for me. And then we say God didn't create it. It just always exists, and you're co-eternal with it. To me, it just seems so impossible to understand then, in the sense that it's like, it can never, matter can't exist unless it's true that it exists. So for me, matter's contingent, because it can't exist unless it's true it exists. So its essence is not its existence, so it has to be contingent on having existence as an accident. And so this idea that matter just exists forever and just as a brute fact seems like such a violent assault on my faculties of reason. And in the scriptures, we read things like that God wrote upon our hearts the law. And I think that that's including not just moral laws, but I think it includes like the laws of logic, like that we're not being asked to forsake reason and to follow God. I think because God is the divine logos. I think he is a logical God. And so the existence of eternal matter always being there forever as a brute fact is just so difficult. So to me, anytime I'm looking at whose interpretation to trust, it's very difficult for me to take the LDS interpretation, because it's like they're selling a much, much, much harder to believe story. And I hate to say like, well, that's why I need way better miracles from them. But it's tough. So what would you say to somebody like that that's really like very, very difficult for me to understand how I could ever accept a brute fact like infinite matter just existing stands cause? Because that's like the atheist position, essentially. Like they just do it with the universe, not with intelligence. So what would you help me out? What would you say?
I would say it didn't start as an atheist thing, right? Because when you look at it, like the whole
The
concept of the Big
pagans did.
Bang, well, yeah.
Go on.
The
I'm so
thing
sorry.
is,
Go on.
yeah, no. I would say that the uncaused cause, the unmoved mover, is actually a pagan philosophical in origin, and it has no place within Christian or Hebraic thought. When you actually look at the context, especially the ancient context, just putting aside the Latter-day Saint understanding out of it for a second, the ancient context, for instance, of how the Hebrews understood the creation of the world or the universe to be, that word bara in Genesis 1 in Hebrew. Yes, it's translated as create, but it's not create out of nothing. It is create by setting in order, to form, essentially. And that is the something that a lot of people don't really quite get, is that from the ancient world and the ancient perspective, when you actually do read the text itself, whether in Hebrew or even translated into English or Greek, we actually do see that even they believed in matter existing previously. It doesn't mean that it had its own mind. It was just a chaotic void. These materials existed. They just needed to be formed or ordered and placed in order.
So one question because is it possible that the primitivist view of the earliest Hebrews might have been less accurate than God's as he fully comes to reveal himself to them? Because like the early Hebrews wouldn't have known everything about God.
If that were the case, then Peter would not reiterate that in the first century. Because the first time, for instance,
does Peter say that creation from matter?
What? Yeah. In fact, he actually says that the earth was formed by pulling the land out of the chaotic waters in 2 Peter 3.
Yeah, but God created the chaotic waters.
No,
John 1:3.
No, he actually says the chaotic waters already existed.
And that's what the Genesis account even
says there too. Yeah, because that, like, when you actually read it, the waters existed, the chaos already existed. God set it in order, so it wasn't just speaking into existence. That kind of notion didn't exist until Neoplatonist thought entered into the consciousness.
Well, okay, so I would think that when I read John 1:3, I don't read John as saying that there's matter that always existed and God organized it. So to me, that reads everything that exists, God created. And
John would be writing from a Hebrew perspective, though.
Well, but the words then I would just argue that means all the Hebrews thought that.
Yes.
Yes. No, that all the Hebrews thought that there was a demiurge that organized matter out of existence.
Yes,
that's the pagan thought.
This is biblical scholarship. They
the
believed that there was a demiurge, and because the concept of ex nihilo did not was not part of the Hebraic understanding. You can try to point to things like Second Maccabees about it, but even then, like when you actually read what Second Maccabees says about the whole ex nihilo thing, the way that it comes across is more with an extremely cocked eyebrow. It's like, you need to take this with a grain of salt because this is what the Greeks are saying. But it didn't really enter into Christian thought until the late Greeks, 2nd century.
The Greeks believed in creation ex materia too, because they're the ones that came up with all the myths.
Depending on who you ask.
The only people who thought about a prime
where
mover,
these philosophies came from.
Yeah, but that's not the religion of the Greeks.
Before we continue, be sure to get your copy of the Apologetics Study Journal for $21.99 on Amazon. Study deeper, research harder, and stand stronger. Get it today on Amazon and at the link in the description or pinned comment. No, but actually, by the time of Aristotle and Plato, it was.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, again, this is what the scholarship
all the polytheistic religions. So, like, all of the religions in mythology, like Greek mythology, like who's the guy that wrote that?
That predates. So Homer predates Aristotle and Plato.
Yeah, but they don't start a religion. They don't start a religion where
they actually do. Because this is where because this is where Tertullian actually breaks out and says, what does the academy have to do with the church? What does Athens have to do with Jerusalem?
So then why are the Christians being punished for not offering up incense to Caesar if there's no polytheism in the first century? So obviously there's still polytheism and paganism in the first century.
Polytheism didn't exist, but by the time
all the polytheists are the ones who are saying that creation materia.
By the time Creatio ex nihilo is entering into Christian thought, this is the late 2nd century, and this is where
John saying it.
No, it's not. He's not saying creation from nothing here.
He's saying everything that exists, God made.
In John 1:3,
does matter exist?
In John 1:3, that's not what it's saying here.
It is absolutely what it says.
Let's see here, because again, John
is
talking from a Hebraic perspective. He's not talking from a Greek perspective.
He's writing in Greek.
Just because he's writing in Greek doesn't mean he's coming from a Greek perspective.
Yes,
and even then, we have no idea if the Greek manuscript is actually the original one. But the thing
So
is,
again,
though,
we'll
is
get
like,
to, you have your interpretation of John 3, and I have my interpretation of John
well,
1,
and
3.
to say
so,
this, then this goes against your claim earlier of the Bible being inerrant, because Second Peter 3 says something different, and Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 say something different.
it doesn't contain an air. So like an air is something much more
Peter
than a
is saying
technical
that the water came out of the chaotic waters, and the waters existed before the formation of the world.
Yeah, but they don't have, just because they predate the existence of the land doesn't mean God didn't create the water. Because like the whole thought that like
again, that's a post hoc insertion that has no bearing on any history.
that's what John
Again,
1
this
3
goes back to
says.
what it doesn't say
So
that,
John
though,
1
because
3
again,
says
this goes back
everything
to
that
what
exists
Tertullian
is
was
made by
saying.
God.
No,
What does John 1 3 say?
All right, John 1 3.
What are the words?
All right.
Let's just
All
listen to
things
the
came
words.
into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. Who has come
Oh,
into
that sounds
being,
pretty
in
bad.
him was life. Hold on, because verse 4 is important here. What came into being in him was life, and the life that was the light of all people. That light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overtake it.
Yeah.
So this is essentially saying the same thing from the Hebraic perspective. This
Is
was
the chaotic waters a thing?
the void. Is God forming things out of the void?
But is the void a thing?
Yes.
Then God made it according to John 1 3.
No, it didn't. Okay, again, this is
Okay,
forming.
it's okay.
A carpenter can create a chair. That is his creation, but the materials
he gives
to create that
existence to the chair.
Yeah. So again, if we are to say that God is following the laws of logic here, the laws of logic would dictate that you cannot create or destroy things. Everything does not have a beginning. The issue at hand here is, again, energy cannot be created or destroyed, and this is exactly what's going to happen here.
It's just
within
okay. So the conservation of energy is only within a closed system. So inside of the universe that God created, when we destroy matter, it's conserved as energy, and when we destroy energy, it's conserved as so we don't actually.
But the thing is, the energy is still existent. Energy
in
cannot
the universe
be
that God created. In the universe that God created,
that goes against the laws of logic. If God is within the realm of logic, he cannot create or destroy energy from out of nothing. There is no such thing as creation from nothing within the biblical text. And again, if we are to be honest about what the history shows, creation from nothing did not enter into the Christian lexicon or the Christian theology until the late
according to your
century.
interpretation.
No, this is scholarship, Bryce.
That's your interpretation of the scholarship.
It's not. It's not. This is what the
scholars. Let's use some philosophy then, real quick. Humor me just a little bit. So when I say, can matter exist if it's not true it exists? Obviously, no. That would violate the law of non-contradiction. If things can exist that don't exist, then the law of non-contradiction is violated. That means everything that has existence is contingent upon the truth of it having existence. Okay. And so when we look at matter and you say, no, it must exist, that can't be true, because the statement, there is no matter outside of matter, is always going to be true. And so, well, how come that's not the same case for God? And it's because it can never be true that there is no truth. And God is truth. God is not matter.
See, this is the problem, though, and this is one of the examples that I honestly, I and several other Latter-day Saints, and even honest biblical scholars, would point to outside of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, would say that this would be unrecognizable to the church that was led by Peter and by Paul. They would not recognize it. And again, going into the scholarship here with creation ex nihilo, because this is one of those things that would be evidences of the apostasy.
Where's the first time the term creation ex materia comes up? Ever? That's not said anywhere.
It doesn't have to be. That's what's stated. It doesn't have to say this is creation ex materia. This
creation ex nihilo doesn't need to be stated.
Well, again, the implication, though, is that if we're looking at the biblical text and what was understood in the ancient Hebrew lexicon, and the ancient
what
Hebrew
you think they understood, you're being very confident on your ability to read the minds of people.
Because again, we look at Bryce. Again, this goes back to when did it enter Christian thought, and this was the exact same thing.
John 1 3. Genesis.
No. because again, you're reading a post hoc insertion into it. The first time this entered
I
and was
just
actually
read
used
John
as
as he wrote it.
no, again, you're going based off of things like Theophilus of Antioch, Basilides, Tatian, excuse me, that's how you say it, Tatian, who are saying these things. But this was not taught in the early church. This was not taught in the first century. This was originally
John was.
inserted into. No, again, that's a post hoc insertion, Bryce.
You're the one who's inserting your
it's not
creation from nothing.
Again, no.
What does
Bryce,
the text say? Does it say that God created some things, some things, or all things?
A creation does not need to pop out of nowhere. You can create something with the material already existing.
Yes, but God creates the material.
He sets it in order. That's the issue here.
That's your interpretation.
No, it's not my interpretation. Again, I can point to several. Like I'll pull this up here. Like we have a comment here that actually points out several scholars, none of whom are Latter-day Saints. Michael Heiser, John Walton, both non-LDS evangelical scholars that say that Genesis does not teach creation out of nothing. If we are to be honest here, creation from nothing did not enter into Christian thought and theology until the last half of the second century.
Would you follow the scholars on their views of the Book of Abraham and the Book of Mormon? Or because if we're going to say
now, because if we're going to be actually going off of that, if you're going to say that the Book of Abraham is somehow inaccurate, you're focusing.
I don't want to get into it, but I was only kidding.
That's outdated. That's outdated scholarly information anyway. If the direction you want to go.
So, okay, so your argument is that yes, that the primitivist view, as you see it, was the most accurate view. And when the Bible says lead you into all truth, it means believe what the primitivists believe. And that
it means
so matter,
the living oracles of God.
Okay. And so, but if God doesn't create matter and he's made of matter himself, why? I guess it's just tough for me to really think why I should worship the God who isn't the source of worth, because everything that's good, true, and beautiful just comes from something else that he found. And so the things of worth are beyond him. It'd be like worshiping the sun, because it's like you're like saying, well, the sun, it gives us energy so we can have all these great things. But the sun's not the cause of those great things. God is. But if you're saying that matter is the true cause of all these good things we have, it's very weird. Very weird for me to wonder why I would want to
because again, you're
worship that God.
You're conflating matter with our ultimate purpose. And that I think is the disconnect there. Because yes, matter has existed. And that
forever.
Matter has formed what we had, for forever. And this was something that was
understood. And how long did the infinite past take to conclude so we could arrive at this conversation to have it?
I have no idea. Time is measured differently throughout
all of infinite time. I mean, it's weird. It's very weird.
I mean, time has been measured differently. I mean, heck,
does God
calendar
create
that we use now
didn't
even exist until the late 1700s.
I just don't see how you could possibly read John 1:3 and it's like you're saying that time exists, but God didn't create it.
But Bryce, that only
if you're reading it.
No, that only works if you use that Neoplatonist lens.
No, the lens is what he says. Does he say all things or some things?
Again,
does he say all things or something?
He says all things, but then again,
is
coming
matter
from that
a
Hebraic
thing?
Understanding.
Is matter a thing? Is matter a thing or not a thing? I think it's a thing.
Within the context here.
Is it a thing?
No. Within the context here, no.
Oh, matter's not a thing, then. Okay.
Again, the context matters. I'm not sure why you're divorcing the context here, because historical context matters.
What he says is God creates all things. Matter is a thing. This is like syllogistic at this point. So yeah. So to me,
again, you're divorcing the historical context. Is John not writing from a Hebraic understanding?
We have two interpretations.
Yeah,
one interpretation rejects.
Which one is John writing from?
He's writing in Greek, and he's using the word logos.
Just because he's writing in Greek, Bryce, does not mean he's writing
from
a Greek perspective.
What's the logos? Is that a Hebraism?
That's a shift. That's a shift. All right.
That's in the chapter. That's
no,
2 verses
again,
before what we're
no.
talking
Okay,
about.
Bryce.
Yes.
Again, that's a shift. Is he writing in the greater context of what the context is here? Is he writing
He's
from a Greek
writing.
perspective or from a Hebraic perspective? Which perspective is he writing from?
He's writing as the perspective of a Greek-speaking Jew. So he's a Jew
Which would
speaking
be
Greek.
so if he's a Jew,
I guess
what perspective would he
a Hellenic
coming
Jew,
from?
I guess. A Hellenic
No.
version.
Well, again, that's depending on whether or not this is
He's
the
a Roman
actual
citizen.
text.
He's a Roman citizen. I don't know what to tell you.
Again, this is getting into the weeds here. But again, this is getting into whether or not the text we have is actually the text written by John himself. But the entire thing here is that John would have to be writing from a Hebraic perspective. John is still a Jew. He's still a Hebrew, regardless
He's
of
a
whether or not he
Hellenic
actually
Jew.
wrote
Yeah.
it in
He's a Roman. He's a member of the Roman, the Roman Empire.
Even Hellenistic Jews
can believe that matter is a thing.
Yes,
because he could have written.
Believe that the creation was not at Nihilo.
Yeah, and I would say that
you talk to any Jew, even Hellenistic Jews, they don't believe in creation from nothing.
Yeah, they do. The Jews today, absolutely, like rabbinic Judaism, they don't believe in a demiurge.
According to who? Paula Fredrickson is a Jewish scholar. She says that she doesn't believe in that there's nothing within Judaism that talks about creation from nothing.
I guess. I don't know. We should have another conversation. I want to flesh this out because I like this. Because I would say that the interpretation that matter has always existed and God cannot create it. The one question I would ask: if the first law of thermodynamics is binding upon God, is the second law of thermodynamics binding on him? Because if that's the case, we're in some serious trouble if the multiverse is being consumed by entropy. It's gonna be a rough slog. That's why we got to get our spirit children built up to fight over the scarce energy in the entropic multiverse of the future. Come on, there's no the laws of thermodynamics are created by God because he's the creator of the universe.
Again, the problem is that in order for creation from nothing to be inserted, and I'll end it here before we this will be the last thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, in order for something like creation from nothing to be inserted, again, this would be one of the many examples of the apostasy that the Hellenistic Neoplatonic philosophical structure from the late 2nd century would need to be read into that post hoc. This would not have been something that even the 1st century Jews would have recognized.
What? But why not? So why would I just don't get that? Why the idea that a Jew wouldn't believe that God created everything? Like if you were to go like back in time and you go to the 1st century and you're going to say, did God create the earth? And they'd say yes. Did God create the matter of the earth? And they'd say, oh no, that was in the cosmic soup that God fished out of.
Right? Bara means to form, to set in order, to create by setting in order.
Does bara, is it ever used to describe human creation, or is it only used to describe God's creation? Like in the Old Testament.
Is there a difference?
Well, if it's only used for God, it might be different than how humans do stuff. So I would look into that, but no. But Monty, such a delight. I appreciate your time, and we should have a chat because I think that the strongest arguments against Mormonism are the theological and the philosophical, because I think the historical arguments get hashed out so much. And it's funny because like all the atheist exmos, that's the only thing they're ever going to want to talk about. Is that, like they turn into like they like just like, hey, I'm going to become the world's greatest LDS historian just to nitpick this stuff, and I'm not that interested in that. And so to me, that's why I think that there's such a lack of discussion about the theological and the philosophical differences, because I think if you say there's 2 interpretations of the Bible, and I have one that squares with the laws of logic as I see them, and one that doesn't, I'm very compelled to the one that lines up with the laws of logic. And so I think that'd be a great place to chat. Thank you so much for your time. Any questions for me?
None for me at the moment. We'll get something set up. I'll look forward to that study about the Eucharistic
The
miracles.
Eucharistic, I'll send you some stuff over. I got some stuff. So have a
All right.
wonderful night. Take care, man.